Anyway, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brain Food Live on Air. We've got a midweek special today. I'm calling this episode 351. I just don't know what the numbering system is anymore, but we've done about 80 odd shows this year. Been brilliant to be on screen, having chats with people, talking about important stuff in our industry. So today, I was just speaking to David off camera here just before we came live. It was one of those things where information security, cybersecurity, candidate fraud, these have just intruded into the recruiter mindset over the last 12 months. Like, you cannot avoid this as part of the job. And I think it's going to be an increasing part of the function of recruitment as we go forward. How do you securitize your business? Because when you think about it, recruitment is one of the very vulnerable areas in recruitment. How many emails are we opening from random people we don't know? How many files are we downloading because they say it's a CV or a resume? How many? What kind of stuff are we doing that is just hyper vulnerable? And I think that vulnerability is being exploited by all kinds of motivations, incidentally. And part of our conversation today is to identify, what kind of motivations are there? Some of them I think can be genuine, others can be, let's say, more nefarious. And how do we separate those? Because we don't want to be in a situation where we produce such a secure system that it actually, blocks out genuine job applicants that are simply wanting to get a job. So how do we do those balances? Anyway, fraud detection is one of the things that we're going to hope to achieve today, at least a demonstration of how it all works. I'm here with David Head, CEO of Endorsed. David, great to see you on the show as usual. For the folks who don't know you, David, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and what it is Endorsed does?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here on the second podcast together, Hung. This is always really fun with you. My background is I've been building recruitment tech for about 10 years. I moved out to Silicon Valley about 10 years ago to build a freelance marketplace startup that we built to about 3,000 customers. And I got really fascinated with talent search at that point and really always wanted to build a SaaS company after that. And then generative AI came out, and it was this really great opportunity to build a talent search product. Teamed up with my co-founder, Kevin, who's an ex-LinkedIn engineer. And he was like building startups on the side. So he was really loving just going from 0 to 1 like that. And, we built a really great AI applicant reviewer about 2 years ago. And then the thing that we saw this year progressively more was that the candidates that the AI applicant reviewer was finding and saying, hey, these are phenomenal people, were starting to become fake. And then the really painful thing was the real candidates weren't getting reviewed. And in some cases, customers were saying, hey, I'm not doing applicant review anymore. I'm just sourcing. We heard this over and over. And then at that point, we were like, man, we need to build a great fraud detection product. And then we built one, it worked well. And then we saw the fraudsters evolve.
Stop press, David.
Yeah.
So you are saying that basically your initial applicant screening product, which is there sitting there basically to, I guess, screen job applications coming through, you're saying that customers were coming to you saying, actually, no, we've actually completely changed the way in which we're going to acquire candidates. We can't deal with that volume. We're going to go back to sourcing. That's crazy how you got that feedback. I think that's a sign of how the industry's had to respond. Number one, to overwhelming volume, lots of reasons why that may be, but also kind of loss of signal in that noise, isn't there? Because the trust is being eroded by the use of generative AI, to be honest with you.
Totally, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we didn't really predict as a society is like, what are the bad actors going to do with generative AI, and how's that going to create new problems for society? And what shape is that going to look like? And then how do we solve it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the solutions to fraud detection, if we can get to that, what are they? Is it generally collecting together things like the social media footprint, looking for inconsistencies there, or is there other techniques? Like, what is the thing that seems to work best in surfacing up the best kind of, it correlates to the fraud aspect, so to say?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because we're hitting a moving target here. This isn't like a normal kind of engineering problem where you have like this fixed endpoint, you can solve it. It's a moving target where the signals have to change constantly, because right when we start solving the fraud problem, the fraudsters evolve and they're very sophisticated. And I can go into that. But as far as signals, like initially we were looking at, phone, email, VoIP, and then seeing some fraudsters, a lot of fraudsters able to just get around it. And then one thing we realized is we're looking at like identities and things like that. Uh, of course, there's like ID checks, and you see, LinkedIn uses Clear and someone's verified. But then we saw increasingly more and more people with verified identities that were fraud, and we were like, wait, what's going on here? And then we realized that just because if all you're looking at is a verified identity, those could be the scariest ones because those are the most sophisticated actors and those are the state sponsored groups. So you need to look at this whole signal together, which I could show you what we've built here.
Yeah, you've raised a very interesting point. Let's talk about the levels of risk and the levels of types of danger, so to say. I mean, we don't want to be kind of sensationalist here, but the risk equals danger. So there's elements of this. So I'm an idiot sort of going through without the expertise, David. So you've got to handhold me through my little sort of risk escalation. So at the bottom level, maybe we might just have people who are exaggerating, let's say, or have allowed ChatGPT to exaggerate on their behalf on a resume sort of a rewrite. Like I could say, here's my resume, here's a job. Please rewrite this such that I get the best opportunity. He rewrites it. I don't really forensically review what is written. Goes in, and it's some stuff in there is not true, right? So
Yeah.
that's one level of risk. It's just basically misuse of or a lack of care in using ChatGPT. That's one level. The
Yeah.
next level up is maybe someone who's using, I don't know, different ways to get into the same job, perhaps. Maybe they've applied, they've been rejected. Okay, great. Way I'm going to change that is maybe I'm going to change my initials around at the top end, reject just go in again, having been rejected as a repeat sort of actor. So maybe that's kind of determined, but also, yeah, you've been rejected once. So, what's the story here? At what point does that become sort of strange? Then you get maybe criminal types who think, actually, do I want to get into this organization for what reason? IP theft, perhaps. Maybe there's market intelligence I could draw out, in the process. Maybe it's payroll. Maybe it's simple case of, what? Do you remember that guy? Who is it? Soham Parak.
Yeah.
Do you remember this guy?
Yeah.
The king,
Overemployment is the
the
category
king
we
of
call
overworking.
it. Yeah.
17 concurrent jobs, something
Yeah.
like this crazy behavior. I like looking at some of his stuff there. I think he was just motivated by the payroll, man. Like,
Yeah. He's not, he's a problem, but he's like a great engineer. Like presumably people are getting some work done. It sounds like he might have been on the less reliable end, but I heard of one, the really challenging one is, I was talking to this founder the other day. He said, hey, I had this fraudster employed for over a year who was referred to me in, and he was a great engineer. We were on camera talking together, the nicest guy. And then I found out that he was North Korean because he slipped up about a year in, and I had like started investigating it, and like the address that he said he lived in Poland was an abandoned building, and then I looked at the IP, and it like disappeared at the North Korean border, and then I looked back at other records, and on one of the videos I saw CCTV cameras like in the corner. And she's like, this guy was great and he was the nicest guy. So it's, you have situations like that that are really scary.
so what this is basically a fraudster that where is the location of the fraud? Because it may be they're technically competent. They may actually be good at the job.
Yeah.
Right. So that gets them through. It's not just fraudulently on the competence or the function of the job. It's the motivation behind it, or maybe the information leakage.
Yeah.
Maybe what information's flying around. Again, I'm kind of, it's a different story, and it's a different story of fraud. But I was writing about the Deal versus Rippling case as well, where you had a mole basically implanted into another business, and it's like, all right, there's massive leakage of intelligence there, and there's other motivations to get there. Like, how do you catch all of this stuff? And then let's go to the very top level. Maybe here's where you get like cybersecurity type people. They're state hackers. They're maybe people that are looking at massive fraud. Maybe it's about bringing sort of huge amounts of money in and out, sort of all kinds of different reasons why they maybe national security type of issues as well. So I guess the from a customer point of view, looking at implementing a fraud mitigation solution, this depends a great deal on sort of how sensitive you are to all of those things. So,
Yeah.
and how close the person you're hiring is involved in some of this tech.
Yeah, and generally, like the highest risk is if you're hiring U.S. remote engineering workers, because that's the ones that we're seeing fraudsters target the most. So if you have those, you either know you have a lot of fraud, or you might not realize that you have as much. Most people seem to know they have a lot, but um, they're also having a lot slip through the cracks. I was
Yeah,
talking to another customer yesterday who said, we've
didn't
not a
know.
customer yet, but he said we've hired like four fraudsters over the last few months by accident. Now we need a really good solution.
Yeah, didn't know. And by the way, folks, the reason why we're talking about this to a recruiter audience is guess whose responsibility fraud mitigation is? It's not going to be a hiring manager, folks. It's not going to be HR. It's going to be you. You're the recruiter. You're the one bringing these candidates into pipeline. You better have a system in place, because how many times, like, whose job's on the line if you introduce a candidate to a hiring manager who later turns out to be somebody who they aren't. The identity is not correct. They're involved in some sort of nefarious activity. It's on you. Like literally, it's on our function. Okay, David. Let's have a look at some solutions to this. What is it? Because you guys have rolled out something, I think, quite recently, so it's out in the wild. And yeah, let's have a look. Let's see how this works, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we just released a Chrome extension, and then which is built on top of the existing Fraud Shield technology that we've built inside of Endorsed. It's kind of an easier way to use it. And yeah, now we have Fraud Shield 3.0, which I'm going to show here. So some of the unreleased stuff that we're rolling out progressively over the rest of the month and early in January. So you guys are getting a sneak peek at the latest version here. So I'll take you from like simple implementation with the Chrome extension to full platform on Endorsed, where you get the most productivity. So you can see kind of the progression that we're seeing a lot of customers take here. All right, let me share my screen and tell me if I can see this. Hopefully this works easily. All right, can you see this here?
Yep, that looks good to me. Let me full screen this. All of us can full screen, if you want to see the screen rather than David and I's faces. So just simply expand screen to see it. Okay, cool. We can see David. What are we looking at here, bro?
Okay, great. So I'm going to take you from install of this, because one of the big problems is everyone's dealing with fraud and they need a solution fast, which is why we've built this to be really extremely easy and fast to implement, to get something started and have some level of protection. So we're going to install the Chrome extension here from the Chrome store and just accept it. It has minimal permissions on security deliberately. We've built this to be like kind of the security team's dream fraud extension from that regard, where it's really narrow, and it just reads the page. So there's no API integration that's needed here where we're like ingesting your whole ATS. It just reads the page. That's Endorsed platform where you're more advanced, but this is the easy way to start where it's simple. So I'll open the Chrome extension now that I have it installed in Greenhouse and refresh the Greenhouse page here so it loads. And then immediately we see a fraud check start running on Louisa. So that's installed a first fraud check. It's literally under a minute, that fast. And then we're looking at a few different signals here, which I'll break down. Here it says Luisa's high risk of fraud. So firstly, we have,
why? Firstly, is Louise a real person, or what's the story?
Yeah, so Luisa's a demo. This is demo data,
Okay,
data
good.
for the record. We wouldn't want to single out someone live on the podcast.
Yeah, by the way, this is a live stream, folks. This is why it's live demo. We haven't run this through before. So what you're seeing is what we're doing. So here we go. But good to know about this.
Yeah. Luisa is not real. But this is how it works. So if we look here, we can see verified identity. Luisa is a real person, right? We're seeing 23 different sources on the internet that we found, some employment records. But why is Luisa high risk of fraud? And I'm actually going to pause here and just go on a little segue into what's going on here. This is a proxy. So what is a proxy? It's a front man. So you're seeing more and more front men used by these sophisticated fraudsters where they're hiring someone or stealing their identity. So you can make,
Okay.
yeah. If you want me to
So
share more about that, I can really quick.
let's dive into that. So basically, what we're saying is, Louisa is a real person. A real person, therefore, is a great individual to be recruited as a proxy because they are a real person. They'll pass the ID checks, the verification stuff that LinkedIn use clear and all this type of stuff. They'll pass that because they're a real person. But then what happens? Like, what's the technique to get whatever bad good stuff from this
Yeah.
proxy?
So as of last week, we actually know exactly how North Korea does it because they were hacked. We hacked the hackers last week. A cybersecurity group did, where they posed as a proxy that North Korea would hire, and then they set up a fake, basically like a fake laptop instance that was a sandbox environment, and North Koreans logged in and they saw everything in real time. So there's like an hour of video where they're negotiating with this guy. So we can get to give you the numbers and summarize that. 10% of the salary if you just let them use your identity and we'll pass like
Wow,
do the background check for them. 20% of the salary if you'll do the interviews. So those are the real rates. Um, so
that's
you
so
either have
interesting.
that as a proxy or you have a stolen identity where there was a case a few months ago where a lady got I think it might have been like the largest arrest of this form where she created a laptop farm in Arizona, infiltrated 300 different companies with it, had I think 80 unique stolen identities, and most of the people didn't even know their identity was stolen. They just started getting tax bills for working at a
Jobs, yeah.
company that, and they were like, I don't work there, and then yeah. So it's
So,
like witting or unwitting actors.
no, no, really, really good. The two, I feel like they're quite separate, even though the technique is similar. But I have heard of stories of people who have been hired as professional interview closers, so to say.
Yeah.
So in other words, you're great at interviewing, sir. I'm going to pay you to go and interview, generate an offer, and then either someone else steps into that job, pretends to be you. You don't have to be there. You've earned your cash by literally converting on that interview. Off you go and convert something else. So I've heard of that as a job, so to say, as an income stream. But then we have straightforward ID theft, right? You steal the
Yeah.
ID, and then no one's any the wiser until those bills come in. But then at that point, maybe it's worth it for the 1, 2, 3 months worth of payroll. That's maybe substantial. If you're a
Yeah.
US remote software engineer, and let's say you're located in a different part of the world where far lower cost of living, you know what, 3 months of a remote US software engineer's salary is going to go a hell of a long way in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So yeah, super interesting.
Yeah. And this is a great point. And I see one of the comments where they're like, that's good money. Where's the sign up page? Exactly. This is why these state sponsored groups are so effective is because they're world class at social engineering, either by convincing people to do things. And now when you have this economy where a lot of people are getting laid off too, it creates this more desperate environment where,
Dude,
there might be like an inverse correlation too with engineering where if they're better at interviewing, sometimes they're not actually, better at coding. So it could create this environment where, there are more laid off people that are great at interviewing and, convincing a company to hire them, but then can't deliver on the job. And one thing I want to also mention on that note, Hung, is that like these fraudsters are not bad engineers. Like they are
yep.
actually incredible engineers, and they're you can research what's going on here. They're actually hand selected from uh, basically like from when they're little, not to be like a IT worker fraudster because it hasn't been going on for that long, but because they're so smart, trained in mathematics and then deployed in like these sorts of situations by authoritarian regimes is how they do it. And so these are like the cream of the crop of the intelligence spectrum, great engineers, but uh, working on behalf of an organization that has no ethical balance and just wants money.
Really, really interesting. There's also, and on the note of people being vulnerable as well. I totally get it. Like the wider economic environment for a lot of people is extremely tough. Now, imagine you're in a situation, you're out of work 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, maybe longer. You're a real person. You've got great LinkedIn. You know, you got rock solid ID everywhere. Someone like you go through a job interview, the 100th job interview you've got, but instead of being rejected, you're being told, "Hey, listen, you've been offered something which might pay your mortgage or something." I can
Yeah,
understand a lot of people, not immediately saying no. Basically, I kind of get it, even
yeah.
though it's tough. Anyway, it's a bigger conversation going forward. Tell me about why you've identified Louisa here as a high potential fraud risk, because we know it's a dummy record, by the way, but we know the record is solid in the sense the identity is there, but the system has said, you know what, we reckon this is a high risk, high fraud risk. Why does the system say this about Louisa?
Yeah, so we'll go into the signals here and see what's going on. Um, Firstly, we have this section which is confidential signals. So we have a new cluster. This has about 30 different signals on it. The first batch is being rolled out this week, and this one right here. And actually, one thing I'll notice, I'll separate what's available right now versus what's coming and like what the timeline is. Like the identity piece, V1 should be rolled out this week, and then there's a new iteration that's going to come out in about 2 weeks. Confidential signals, same thing. Since those are like pretty deep signals that need a few iterations. It's not like we're just using another data provider pulling it in like some signals are. It's pretty complex engineering under the hood. But with this one, we have all these signals. These are being kept private for the reason being because these fraudsters literally will look at this and then change their tactics. So we have to have some degree of privacy on the signals. And it's calling out that, hey, we're seeing details within the whole situation that make this look like fraud. And we're looking at the whole picture, right? And minute details. Basically, our data science teams picked up on a lot of little details about really the whole journey of that fraudster getting to you, and then who they are that throws off some suspicious signals. So, and that they're really correlated to fraud. So we have that here as one, but this is just one category, right? There's more signals that we're looking at that go into the overall algorithm that we have, which is the AI machine learning model that we've built. So the other ones are a lot of things that you might already be looking at manually, like identity mismatches is one. So if you're looking at like fraud has a cost. So the fraudsters have their own cost model, right? It's basically a business, and creating an identity is expensive, but creating the resumes at scale is cheap. So what they do is they have one identity, but then they tell ChatGPT basically, or use actually they'll use the same mass application tools that job seekers will actually, like real job seekers, and they'll say, hey, create the perfect resume. And then what'll happen is they'll say, oh, well, you need 8 years of experience in Python here. I'm going to say that I have 8 years of experience in Python so that it works. But then the real identity, in this case, it's saying they have 3 years of front-end engineering experience. So it's flagging as like, hey, this is pretty unlikely because this is Python's like back-end engineering language, and it's just an unlikely scenario there. And the resumes will basically be catered exactly to the job versus the identity, can't be at scale as easily. So that's one where we're looking at mismatches. Another is the email. So is it a recently discovered email online? We're looking at that. The phone number metadata. Is this like a VoIP number? Is this something where like the name of the phone is mismatching the other pieces of the identity? And there are multiple signals that'll also are clustered within each category, and we'll flag various ones depending on the whole situation here. Another one is LinkedIn. So is this a
No
recently?
LinkedIn URL provided. Yeah.
Yeah, is this like, a lot of times they won't provide a LinkedIn URL. Now they're providing it more, but it's, a real person's LinkedIn. Or it could just be a recently created profile. So it's a burner LinkedIn account.
I was gonna say like the LinkedIn, but this is almost like leveraging LinkedIn's own sort of weight and trust signal, isn't it? Because LinkedIn obviously have a vested interest in blasting out sort of fakes and bots, even though I'm not sure they're particularly good at doing that. But at the end of the day, they do have vested interest in doing. I'm sure they do have a fraud sort of department there.
Yeah.
So a recent LinkedIn profile, incomplete LinkedIn profile, maybe a LinkedIn profile, the name is different, or perhaps it's sometimes, it's just not being cared for in some way, there's no bio picture, let's say, or things of this type.
Yeah.
I mean, I get this actually through, because I obviously get subscribers onto Recruiting Brain Food. For some reason, there's fake subscribers to my newsletter. I don't understand why. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the motivation is on there, but very clearly they're not human beings. And you can tell by sometimes the email will tell you that. It'll say, some garbled message plus some test thing, and then it's, a domain, and you go check them out a little bit further, and it's connected to basically an empty LinkedIn page. You think, okay, why has someone done that? I don't know, but it's an obvious case where that's not a human being. So yeah, interesting. But LinkedIn's useful for sure.
Yeah, LinkedIn's useful, and yeah, LinkedIn's actually doing they're making a lot of advancements on the fraud blocking front. Like they're doing a good job at getting a portion of it. I actually, it was funny. I tried creating set up a demo. I was like, oh, I don't want to use someone's real identity. I want to create a fake LinkedIn account so I can use that as part of a demo. And I slipped up and they blocked one of them and they kicked it off. And they're like, you need to verify your identity. So I was like, okay, this is good. It's actually, they have really good tripwires in place.
Do you remember what you did?
Oh man. So it wasn't changing experience. I remember I was like, which companies do I pick? And I was, changing companies, and it wasn't that. I can't remember. I can't remember. It was something where I remember doing it. And I'm like, all right, yeah, that's kind of a good signal. And they didn't kick me off. They just said, hey, verify your identity. But then this actually goes into another problem that I want to point out, which is, again, like, if I'm the front man hired for 10% of my salary, and I could be doing this for like 100 different fraudsters, right? Like, that's the crazy thing about if you decide to be, a professional front man, is it's not like you're only just working one job. You can work, you make 10 times as much money as you can, like, working legitimately. Then you're having a real identity check. And then you can have multiple identities on like the same person. So that's where the thing that we saw was we were like, wait, all these LinkedIn verified people, it's like a real account, but it's fraud. What's going on? And that's when we were like, oh, it's proxies. But then the challenging thing for LinkedIn is that they don't have an incentive. They have contradictory incentives, to go on another little tangent here, where everyone knows LinkedIn charges pretty penny. The metrics that they'll report on to justify ROI are like, how many applicants are you getting? And if 75% of those applicants are fraud, then they have to wipe out the fraud, which then makes their, the teams then conflict with each other. So it's really challenging for them.
Yeah. Something's just occurred to me as well. That there is a scenario where people might just sell, as you say, inadvertently set. Let's say they retire. Like, I'm just thinking, people might just have retired out of work and they no longer perceive LinkedIn as anything valuable, other than the fact maybe they can sell it. Maybe it becomes like a rental property, where you can say, you know what, that's going to give me 5K a year, I might as well. And then, off they go. And then they just don't think about what else is going on with that. And you then have an asset which is probably worth 5K a year for some other organization, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yep, totally. Very interesting, mate.
Yeah. And these proxies don't know that they're being hired by like North Korea. They're just like, hey, it could be like someone who's like, hey, I can't, speak English well or something like that. And like, they want you to feel bad for them. They're like, I can't speak English well. I'm a really good engineer though, I promise. Will you just like interview for me?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then you have no idea, even as the proxy.
Or maybe you don't even care. Like, there's a huge trust collapse. Every year, Edelman comes out with Trust Barometer, and every year it's the same story. Like, the institutional distrust is just going downhill. I think a great deal of that is this like massive surge of information we're getting. Like, we don't know what is true anymore. And the trust in companies, we've had 5 years of like crazy roller coasting, change of values, multiple big tranches of layoffs, all this type of stuff. You can totally imagine people being saying, okay, every man for himself.
Yeah.
I no longer have faith in the system, so to say. I'm just going to get what's okay for me.
Yeah.
And off you go. David, I'm intrigued by
Yeah.
the next thing you've said there.
Yeah.
Mass application service. So you're
Yeah.
saying that is use of this. It goes into the system to say, you know what, we've got to keep an eye on this, and someone who's like excessively using may in fact be a fraudster.
Um, we see a correlation, but it's not a smoking gun. Like I think honestly, most job seekers probably, if they aren't already using this, most probably will, because if the average job search takes 6 months, which is grueling.
Crazy.
So at that point, if you think, well, hey, I can have an AI help me, like recruiters are having AIs help them, which we've built, and I can show you here in a second. But we also want job seekers to have some help with AI too. And they'll use these services as well, but then you have it used by a bad actor. So this is where it's like, hey, it's a warning, but not a smoking gun.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you measuring just the use of it, or are you measuring the kind of activity rate of the usage, or is that not a good signal either way?
Yeah, I mean, there's the usage which is detectable. Just see like, okay, this is coming from one of these services, and then there's also, uh, like fraudsters will apply to 10 different positions in your same company. You can see that, and that's more likely to be a mass application service. So
Yeah,
yeah,
very, very interesting.
yeah, and then the other component of that is like, is the resume human written or not? If it's human written, going back to this element of like, what is the cost of fraud? It's more expensive to use a human than an AI for this case. So if it's human written, it's usually it's a strong positive signal.
Yeah,
That
and that
just
here's we're looking at AI speak, or I don't know, looking at things like the M dash as an example as a signal, right? Yeah, yeah.
Everyone says the M dash. I like using M dashes.
You're an organic user of M dash, David. Before
I was, and now I'm like, man, now I can't use the M dash, or people are gonna think that everything I'm taking is AI. Yeah.
That's it. It's become a distrust signal for you, David. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
but there we go. Okay, and the final thing, I think the device info is quite strong, isn't it? IP address, and this is where we're kind of thinking. IP address discorrelation with stated position, I guess. Like if the person's saying they're from location A and but their IP says they're location B, or you can probably say, hang on, that's a risk factor, isn't it?
You would think this one is more of a smoking gun than it is.
Okay.
Reason being is going back to the laptop farms where 300 companies were infiltrated by just one lady who was doing this. They'll ship the laptop. In her case, it was Arizona. And then she'll install remote software on it where the fraudster can tap in from anywhere. The IP is coming from Arizona from a house.
Right.
So the sophisticated fraudsters are going to bypass this easily.
Right. So basically, an amateurish fraudster might be caught out by this.
Yes.
But the real dangerous people, or not dangerous, dangerous people, the higher risk people, definitely there's easy ways to get around. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. You would think that it's like, oh, well, they're using a VPN. I can see where they are. But these are very technical people that know this is what you can do. So yeah, it's not as good as you might think for the sophisticated cases.
Tell me about VPN and browser. This is interesting. Are you telling me Chrome is more a Chrome browser user is more likely to be fraudulent? That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, you're pointing out something where as I'm looking at the demo environment here, maybe we should put Chrome as a check. But yeah, with there are certain VPNs that the fraudsters actually prefer. We did learn that last week what the preferred VPN is. Now they're going to change it though. Again, we're getting targets. So now that that article has gone out, it's probably not going to be the VPN of choice.
Was there any reason for that VPN of choice? I mean, what's your read on that? Like, was there a reason? Is it just cheapness, let's say, or?
I'm not sure. I didn't dig into that. I'm sure there is some reason probably related to it being more of a private VPN that's harder to trace. That would be my guess. If I was a fraudster,
Mm,
that'd be like the first thing I would probably do.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. And this one thing to note on this, I want to go back to like what is available now versus not, and how does this all work? Some ATSs we cannot support this on because they're not applying to our system. So some ATSs will surface this information, which we can then pull in. So this is available. It's available for some and not. And then I should probably mention on the other ones like mismatches. I want to mention timeline because everyone should try this extension out, and I want to point out the gaps of like what's available and what's not, and when it's coming. Mismatches should be coming in like 2 weeks or so. The email, phone, LinkedIn, known fraud network available, and then candidate source is also coming here in a few weeks, and then the AI detection is also coming, probably on the order of like 4 to 6 weeks on that one. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the timeline here.
Mhm.
So yeah, going through the last signals here, we have candidate source and known fraud network. What are these? If someone's a referral, less likely to be fraud, but not every time. Like that story that I mentioned initially, that was a case where someone hired a referral that turned out to be North Korean. So not always a perfect signal. And then the known fraud network is there are a lot of lists that are leaking that are like, hey, here are all these emails, identities of fraudsters. What we're seeing though is that it's the most easy to create burner emails at scale. So
Yeah.
this is you can't really rely on just like a leaked fraudster email list too well. But we're also building a database internally of the fraud. So when we see like known fraudsters, we'll see certain identities and can build that system. So that's what's in here. And one thing to call out regarding your Chrome extensions, there are a lot of very sketchy Chrome extensions that are like harvesting your data. This is not one of them. We don't even store the candidate that is looked at in our primary database. So like the known fraud network is not being accumulated based on like Chrome extension usage. It's there are different ways that we build that with customers like deeper down the funnel. So it's built to be, again, like we're not training AI on the data or anything like that. It's like not harvesting anything. So something I'm really proud of that we built here with the Chrome extension. So just wanted to call that one out as well.
No, really important. That's actually an interesting marketing challenge for you guys, isn't it? Because one of the sad ways in which you can you could distribute malware is to present it as malware prevention. And that's back in the antiviral virus days when everyone was like obsessed with this, there were a lot of fraud actually went through what was marketed as antiviral software was in fact itself viral. So yeah, it's interesting how you guys market this, but yeah, there's ways and means, isn't there? Being transparent, being able to explain it, doing live demos, stuff like this. I think it's got to help.
Totally. So yeah, these are all the signals. This is the check. The last things here are if you're an enterprise, you care about audit records. Like we've built this for enterprises, like Fortune 500s are the ones that have gotten hit with fraud, some of the worst cases, because it's easy for a fraudster to hide in a company that is larger. So we built this to be very much an enterprise platform, as well as smaller companies can use it as well. But we have the compliance records that you can create here, where your team can actually tag the fraud as well, and create a database of that. Now, this said, again, like you can run these fraud checks at the applicant review phase before like offers or before interviews, down funnel. That's typically what a lot of people are using it for. And it's just looking, pretty much everyone actually is using it like throughout the whole funnel. But the issue here, if you're trying to go at applicant review phase, you're getting 1,000 applicants, 5,000 applicants, and 50% of them are fraud, which is the average number that we're seeing in our database for remote engineering roles. You need more scale. Like you shouldn't be going through one at a time waiting for these fraud checks to run. You need more productivity gains so you can get your time back. And that's where the Endorsed platform comes in. So once you've seen that, like, hey, these fraud checks are great, I love this tool, then you go into the platform, and this is when we do the API integration. We connect to your ATS. We give you, the full power of AI productivity gains with the fraud shield blocking technology as well. So
okay, so make this clear for us, David. Let's say, okay, we're on board. We can't do these one-to-one checks. We think that we're getting, maybe the one-to-one checks has revealed a high rate of fraud, and we think we don't know how big this problem is. Let's go on board to Endorse. What good stuff happens as a result of that?
yeah, at that point, you are basically able to bulk action on the fraud and then also find the top candidates, which is important. Like, at the end of the day, we want to get to the good people that we want to hire and get through this fraud maze. So this is basically taking over your applicant interview interface in your ATS. It's kind of a super applicant reviewer. So all your jobs and all your applicants are just regularly synced in here. And then if I click into one of these jobs, click our applicant pool here, we can see that we have this stack rank of all the applicants where the AI's read our job description and just come up with an initial rank that is good, not great. I'll show you how we make it great in a second, but we're stack ranking them. We're running all the same fraud checks. So you see it's the same signals that the browser extension has inside of Endorsed that you can see. And one of the key differences, though, here from a productivity perspective, so we can see that, like, the fraud filters to the top. That's the problem with an AI tool that doesn't have good fraud detection technology, is you're basically saying, hey, AI, give me all the fraud that's intermingled with the real candidates. In Endorsed, 2 clicks and I'm back to my real candidates. You can just filter it out. And this bulk filter here inside the app, this is something also that's coming out here in about 3-4 weeks as part of the Fraud Shield 3.0 release. So it's that easy is how this works. And then we're just back to looking at the legitimate people.
Yeah, very interesting. Quick question, David. We're going to get it wrong, right? There's going to be wrong flagging, and somebody who, for one reason or another, genuine candidate, but they've been picked up inadvertently. How do we deal with that? How do you mitigate that issue? Because no one wants to be in a situation. I'm pretty sure no vendor wants to create that scenario, but it's almost inevitable. So how do we mitigate that?
Yeah, totally. And this is really important once you get into like the 10, 20,000 company compliance territories, which we work with as well. Like, it has to be as close to perfect as possible. This is why it's important for an AI to be determining whether or not they're fraud versus a person, because there's so many different signals which look like they could be fraud or not, and you have to be basically a trained fraud detection to figure out expert to figure out if they are or not. And that's where we have a proprietary machine learning model which is trained on the fraud. So we basically, how this works is we have a bunch of examples of, hey, these are fraudsters, these are real people, and then here are ones where it's really close looking, where, like, real identity, proxy, but fraud, real people. And then what happens is this is machine learning, where all these signals that you just saw will be fed into that model, and then it basically says, hey, this is important. It's called a weight, where, like, it'll say, like, out of a 1 score, this one is a 0.1, this one is a 0.15, this one is a 0.2, and those weights are created during the machine learning process. So that's how you make it extremely accurate, is you need a lot of different signals, and then you need to run the machine learning process so that the model comes out accurately. And it's again, like, this is a moving target, so, like, there are edge cases where it's not perfect. So I wouldn't say, like, just use your gut intuition in combination with Endorsed Fraud Shield is a good case. Like, if you feel like you're like, this person's really real, but then Endorsed saying it's fake. Like, dig into it more. Dig into it more. Use both signals. Um, but Endorsed is right vastly more often than wrong. So with that being said, it's any case, the way that we close the gap there, because we want like basically 99% accuracy, because then if you're a larger enterprise, like 99.9, then if you're a larger enterprise, you can do these bulk actions and the legal department is okay with it. Is how we're seeing this. So we want to get to that point, and the way that we get to that point is anytime any fraudster slips through, which I actually can't think of a single case that I've heard any customer complain about this, but the way this operates is if they say, hey, there's a fraudster that slipped through, they weren't tagged, then we will take that example and use that and say, like, basically, what happened here that slipped through, and make sure that that example, maybe not that exact candidate, of course, but like that example, the signals that we see that we missed are factored into the new training. That's generally how it works to make sure that we're staying on top of things.
Yeah,
So
very
you
interesting.
catch the edge cases, then learn from them.
Yeah, and as you say, David, we're never going to solve, quote unquote, solve them, because this is basically it is an evolutionary system. It's an evolutionary relationship, and there probably ends up being an equilibrium at some point. But you owe it to your business and you owe it to yourself to get on top of it, and not be defeated by the opposition, so to say. So yeah, really interesting. I think it's a big part of what a recruiter needs to get familiar with, which kind of leads me to my next question, David. I mean, firstly, fantastic to see technology supporting of this type. And the question is from a recruiter perspective, like, what do they need to build in terms of their mindset or their skill set or whatnot for them to be actually optimal in this component of the job? Because prior to, I would say 5 years ago, this type of background checking, fraud mitigation, that's like literally a back office, do it later type of activity. I mean, in most cases, not do it at all. And now it seems that, okay, we've had two generations of recruiters that basically never did this. Now they've got to do it. So what kind of skills and mentality do we need to develop here?
Yeah, I mean, if you're hiring for remote roles, and especially remote US engineering roles, these are the ones where you need to really kind of level up your sophistication on this kind of fraud prevention more. But it's really like knowing what the signals are that you're looking for, trusting your gut, like, even if you feel like, hey, am I being biased? Like, there are a lot of cases where that signal is a telling one. So if you feel like there's fraud, just explore it more, investigate it more. And as you saw with the top of the funnel checks, like, you probably need some tool, whether or not it's endorsed or not, to complement it. But down funnel is where I think it's most important to start bringing like the human element in the mix, where that's where your skills come in. Like, again, during the video calls, use your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Then down funnel, on sites are a good idea. This is a company decision too, so it's important to bring the rest of the company in. Like, if you're hiring, especially if you've hired a fraudster, like, you should probably consider doing on sites. That makes it just harder. All right, going back to this cost, the fraud's more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder whether that may itself be a deterrent in some way. Like, let's say if you had a job, it'd be interesting to do some stats on that. Like, let's say a fully remote versus, okay, part-time remote. If you had to do 3 days in the office, 2 days in the office, 1 day in the office, I reckon there will be a difference in the amount of fraud that's going toward those businesses that have fully remote, simply because that's the most obvious place where you're going to get purchase. Whereas if you've got to show up, literally, you've got to send someone in. I mean, that's going to be
it. We actually ran the data on this. So we ran like analyses and sliced up where the fraud is surfacing. And if you have a remote role, you're 10 times more likely to have the fraudulent candidate. Like, any given candidate, if you have any candidate's 10 times more likely. And then the thing that we're also seeing is that the fraud that's on the non-remote roles are less sophisticated fraudsters. It almost seems like an error in their systems that they've applied to an in-person role. So if you're in person, you're mitigating most of it. That's why I keep emphasizing that it's remote as the attack area for them.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's totally the case, and it's just that's one of the sadder things about this, because remote should be a fantastic, liberating experience for a lot of workers, but the reality is it just creates a huge vulnerability. And I hope we find a way to plug it, because I love to have a more permissive culture where where trust, you can trust your workers, you can trust people that have been recruited that maybe never show up to the office.
Yeah,
But we're not there yet with the ability to fully nail it. And we're going through that period where, yeah, you can imagine if the fraud risk being cited as one of the reasons to roll people back to in office a little bit more.
yeah, totally.
Okay, fantastic stuff. Anything else to show us, David, or are we there with the end of the demo?
Um, I could go a little bit deeper into the AI side with the applicant review. A lot of people have probably seen this. One thing I want to mention, though, that you just jogged my memory on, is that uh, because this fraud is like a changing thing, and we're hoping that this remote environment isn't made worse because of AI. We just came to the conclusion that like there has to be a company that's committed to evolving at the pace of fraud. You can't just have an update ship in 2 quarters or a quarter and expect to stay on top. You need to be, shipping updates like the next week if you see a fraudster evolve, or in like a few days. So we decided as a company to commit to that, to just commit to staying on top of fraud. And for the next like 2 months, our entire roadmap is just all fraud updates. And then beyond that, it's TBD based on the evolution of the adversary at that point.
Yeah, really interesting. David, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning of this, I mean, this is an ongoing demand, ongoing need. I can imagine this is just one of the guaranteed growth areas for every business going forward.
Yeah.
How much do you guys want to play in this field? Because you started off as a applicant sort of screening tool, then a sourcing tool, and now it looks like fraud mitigation tool. I mean, do you see this as a bigger slice of the endorsed pie, so to say, going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like it's I'd say like right now the way the system's evolving, it's like the primary slice that we're doubling down and tripling down into. And yeah, I mean, someone has to solve this fraud problem, so that or who knows what's going to happen to remote work long term.
Yeah. And by the way, I hope that you do it, David. I hope so. So you and the other great entrepreneurs out there are able to produce solutions that make sense, because there is a positive future amongst all of this. I mean, the positive future is we have a completely open way in which almost anybody can apply to any job. Everyone gets screened. Everyone gets assessed, fairly assessed, equally assessed, and then we go through process. But we need to have the fraud mitigation in place for that to happen. Without that sort of fraud mitigation going on, recruiters will end up making practical solutions, which is, oh, I'm not going to bother advertising then. I'm just going to dive deep to my network, which is great, by the way. But you know what? Your network isn't fully the rest of the market. And do we want a world where actually jobs are all hidden from everyone?
Yeah.
Imagine a world where you're not particularly well connected to I don't know, certain community or whatever, and you just never see a job opportunity because it's never shown to you, because people are scared about fraud or other things. So there is a positive future. We just have to get to it, and the journey towards that future is just going to be a little bit. There's going to have to be rough around the edges. We've got to battle our way through to get to that point. Great stuff, David. Well, listen, yeah, great to share this. I think someone's even asked for a sign-up page and stuff like this. So I wonder whether you can
Yeah.
share that into the chats. I'll make sure I'll distribute
Yeah.
that to everyone else.
I just dropped in the extension link. So if anyone wants to download this and just get up and running with fraud detection, in 60 seconds, that's the way. And then yeah, book a demo with me over here. So if you go to endorsed.com/demo, just drop that link in as well. we could talk about the full platform as well if you're interested in that.
Fantastic stuff. I didn't even forget to mention the commercials here. How are you charging for
Yeah.
detection? Is that per search? It usually is, isn't it? Per detection, so to say, per candidate it's gone through process.
Yeah, great question. So the extension actually is a free plan. So you can get up and running
Okay.
with no charge. And there's a cap on the number of projects you can do, but there's a free plan on that. And then uh, we're not charging by the fraud check because again, like the fraudsters get 10x the amount of fraud going out, and then your budget's blown up. So we're just charging a monthly. There's a monthly price on the upgrade for the extension. It's $80 a month. It gives you 400 fraud checks per month, and then on the beyond that, like if you're doing an enterprise plan or like the full endorsed platform, then the endorsed platform can come in at $300 a month to start, and the enterprise plans start kind of in that like upper four-figure, five-figure plan for the growth plan, and then the enterprise plans are like deeper into 5 figures if you're
Yeah.
like a person company.
Fantastic stuff. It sounds very reasonable as well, David. Okay, that's great stuff. David Head, really great to see you again. Really great to see the innovation rate coming out of Endorsed. And yeah, thanks for educating us on a very interesting part of the interweb. Really, this is a fascinating way how different motivations collide with different technology innovations that produce outcomes no one ever would expected, and then we've got to provide solutions and responses to that. It's an evolution. So within that evolution, hopefully we're all going to get there in the end. David, great to have you on the show as usual. Thanks for joining. Hopefully we'll keep in touch. Of course, we'll keep in touch. In fact, everyone who's watching this, I'll ping you a message with the links that David sent. And of course, this show will be available for replay as well. So folks who sort of didn't get it first time will be able to see it simply by pressing the same link, and you'll be able to see it on replay. Okay, I think that's about it, David.
Thanks for having me. This is fun, and I feel like I'm watching a movie with this fraud topic unfold. So it's fun to share all the cool learnings with everyone.
Do you know what? I know you're very busy, David, but I do think you probably should document some of the stuff that some of the stories that you're seeing, because I do think there'll be really interesting vignettes that you could put probably to a story or a movie, or someone could script that out, and it'd be actually very interesting to review.
They're really fascinating, and they're accelerating. The interesting stories are exponentially increasing, which is it's cool. It's cool. But we're grateful to be in the position to help companies solve all this problem as well.
Fantastic stuff. It's David Head from Endorsed, folks, with fraud-proof AI. Check it out. It's in the link in the chat.
Take care.